What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to week 3 of the Lowdown. Last week's record was 10-4, bringing the yearly record to 18-6. The upset of the week, which was the Oregon State Beavers, was a hitter. The losses were Appalachian State, Notre Dame, Florida, and UAB. What a weekend it was. Great win by Tennessee over Pitt. Tennessee's offense is they're legit, but their defense made a play when they needed to win that game, and that should give them a little bit of confidence moving forward. Florida, Kentucky, didn't really know what Florida was doing there on offense. It seemed like their game plan was to get Anthony Richardson involved in the passing attack, and he just wasn't that good. I mean, I think he was 14 of 35. For 100-something yards and threw 2 picks. But, I mean, he was overthrowing guys, and it just did not look good throwing the football. So he's a dynamic player, no doubt. I did not understand why they didn't get him involved in the running game like they did the previous week in the win over Utah. I mean, I think he only had like 4 yards rushing. I mean, with the player that dynamic, you got to get them more touches on the ground. I mean, because what they were doing against Utah, they were misdirecting them, running all over the place. Guys were running everywhere, and they were just gouging them with chunk yardage on the ground. And that opens up the passing game. But I thought they kind of had a whole different game plan last week against Kentucky. And you got to tip your hat to Kentucky. I mean, their defense played great. Will Levis, I mean, you saw him before the game. He was talking about how the team was going to win the game, and they did. And it was an impressive win for the Wildcats. And it's going to be a nice race in that SEC East between Kentucky and Tennessee for that number 2 team. Because I mean, I think Georgia they clearly look like the best team in the country right now. I mean, but it's still early. A lot can happen, but Georgia looks like the most complete team to me. Alabama last week, hey, they won the game. That's when you can play when you don't play your best and you don't get beat, that's a good thing. That's a sign of a team that has character and stays in the fight and wills itself to victory. Bryce Young, they didn't have him at quarterback. I don't think they would have won that game. The kid made plays in the fourth quarter. Alabama's defense stiffened in the fourth quarter. But Bryce Young helped them win that game. And, of course, Will Reichert, who's one of the most dependable kickers in America, nailed the game-winning field goal. 15 penalties, very uncharacteristic of Alabama. I don't know if the last time I've seen that. It's been a long time. There are question marks with the Crimson Tide, though, on the offensive line at corner and receiver. Guys dropped some passes. I thought Texas's defensive line gave Alabama's offensive line some problems, and that kind of surprised me a little bit. But you can clean up the penalties. That's something you can clean up. Now, cornerback play, receiver play, offensive line play, we're going to have to see how all that shakes out. But hats off to the Crimson Tide for getting the victory. Hats off to Appalachian State going into College Station, getting a big win. They should have beaten North Carolina. I thought they outplayed them. That was a heck of a ball game. Chase Bryce is for real there at quarterback for App State. Their offensive line nicknamed the Bulls. I mean, I think Texas A&M got a little running of the Bulls last weekend. But hats off to the Appalachian State team. And let's get into the games this week. Friday night, Florida State. After a big win over LSU, they traveled to Louisville. Florida State's had 2 weeks to prepare for this game, so they should be fresh. They should have a good game plan. Last week, Louisville went to Orlando and beat Central Florida. I think this is going to be a high-scoring game. If I was going to lean to a team, I'd probably lean FSU. I like Jordan Travis there at quarterback. But one thing I'll say about FSU, Jaden Daniels gave them all sorts of problems running in their victory of LSU. And Malik Cunningham can run. So I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. And if I were to make a pick, I'm gonna go Louisville 34, FSU 31. Moving to the 11 a.m. games, and I'm hitting on some of the bigger games, okay? Georgia travels to South Carolina. South Carolina, they can't stop the run, and that's not good at playing Georgia because Georgia can run it. And I thought Spencer Rattler played a pretty good game last week against Arkansas. But just this is too much Georgia. I mean, everybody talked about Stetson Bennett too. Can he follow up? Is he that good of a quarterback? I think we're all seeing. I think this game this week will give us a little bit more clue about how good he is. But he has so many pieces around him, and he knows that offense. And I think Stetson Bennett's going to be an all SEC player this year. I really do. Now, he might not be a first teamer because you got Bryce Young and Hendon Hooker and guys like that. But I think he's going to put up big numbers in this Georgia offense. And that the Georgia football team in itself just looks like the best team in America right now, period. And I think Georgia rolls here. I'll say 48-10. Moving on to UConn at Michigan. Jim Moore Jr. has done a good job with the UConn team so far. Yeah, they're 1-2, but they're playing hard. There's a kid on their team. His name is Jackson Mitchell. He's a linebacker. He's an active linebacker. He's one of the better players that I've seen. And yeah, he plays at UConn, but he's a heck of a player. And I think that's one guy you can keep an eye on in that game if you're watching that game. But Michigan's offensive line is strong. Let's see here. So I think Olusegun Oluwatimi, he's their starting center. Dude's a player. Zach Zinter, offensive guard, 6'6", 315. He's a player. I like Michigan to roll big here. I'll say Michigan to 58, UConn 10. Oklahoma at Nebraska. Of course, Scott Frost was relieved of his duties. Oklahoma's, playing good football right now. We'll see if the coaching change inspires the Cornhuskers. Casey Thompson there at cornerback. I think this is going to be a pretty good game, just because I do think Nebraska will rally a little bit. But I'll say Oklahoma gets it done. I'll say 30-27. Moving to an intriguing 1:00 game, South Alabama at UCLA. UCLA started off 2-0. South Alabama is coming off a big win over Central Michigan on the road. Central Michigan almost beat Oklahoma State in week 1. That's a big spread, 15.5 points. If you're looking at a game off the radar, I don't know how good UCLA is. Dorian Thompson-Robinson is a really good player there at quarterback. Chip Kelly there, is their offensive. He's their head coach, and I know his offense is fast-paced. But I think South Carolina is going to hang in that game. I think that's going to be a pretty good game. I'll say UCLA 34, South Alabama 27. Going to the 2:30 games, BYU at Oregon. This is my upset of the week. Last week I took Oregon State. And knocked off Fresno State. Yeah. But this week I like BYU going into Eugene and getting a win over Oregon. Bo Nix is just too inconsistent there at quarterback. They beat Eastern Washington, I think, last week. But, I like this BYU team. Jaron Hall, Christopher Brooks is a big bruising runner. Chase Roberts is a big threat, big play threat there at wideout for BYU. I think BYU goes in and takes out the Ducks, and I'll go BYU 30, Oregon 26. 2:30 game, Ole Miss at Georgia Tech. Jackson Dart seems like he's gotten a hold of the QB job. He's an athletic player. Ole Miss is second in the SEC in rushing behind Arkansas. Jukins there at running back's a really good player for him. Offensive line's been playing well. I like Ole Miss to go in there and just steamroll Georgia Tech. And Georgia Tech's probably going to be looking for a new coach here after the season. I like Ole Miss big, 44, Georgia Tech 17. 2:30 game, Troy at Appalachian State. App State favored by 12.5. Troy's a good team, but this Appalachian State team, man, their offense is for real. And I think Appalachian State that has the potential to be a good game. But I think App State's going to be too much for them. I'll go Appalachian State 38, Troy 23. Moving to the big 2:30 game, Penn State at Auburn. The Orange out. Last year, this was a heck of a ball game in Happy Valley. I think the big thing in this ball game is the quarterback play. And Penn State, they have a player that's really reliable there in Sean Clifford. He sparked them to a big win over Purdue in the season opener. TJ Finley, for Auburn, has thrown 3 interceptions against Mercer and San Jose State in the first 2 games. Robbie Ashford threw a pick last week. I think Ashford gives them more of a dynamic playmaker at quarterback. I'm not sold on TJ Finley. I just don't think he's accurate enough throwing the football. And he's got the makeup and he's 6'6" and 200-something pounds and can throw the ball far, but he's just not accurate to me. And you got to have that as a quarterback. You got to be accurate. You got to put the ball on the money. And I think I'm just really skeptical about Auburn's quarterback play. And I think Eric Kiesau, I think the offensive coordinator, they're going to have to rely on a running game against Penn State. Because Penn State's corners, they're good. Terry Porter Jr. is a good player. Jair Brown, he's a good player at safety. Johnny Dixon there at cornerback, he's a playmaker. So I think Penn State's secondary is going to be able to lock Auburn's receivers down pretty well. And I think this is going to be a low-scoring game. I do give the edge to Auburn at home, though, just because of the crowd. And I do think Auburn's defensive front is going to give Penn State's offensive line a lot of problems. Colby Wooden's an All-American type player at defensive end. Jason Jones, the Oregon transfer, 6'6", 330. Marcus Harris is an active player there at tackle. And then you got the edge rushers, Derek Hall and Hiku Leota. Owen Papo there at linebacker, Cam Raleigh. I just think I give the edge to Auburn in an upset here just because they're at home. And I think the kicking game may get involved here. Anders Carlson and Oscar Chapman. I like Auburn's kicking game there. I give them the edge there. I think Auburn squeaks one out here 22-17. Moving on, UL Monroe at Alabama. Do y'all think the Tide's going to be pissed off this weekend? You think Saban's been on their butt? I bet he's made Will Anderson run about 80 stadium stairs this week. Will's the best player in the country, in my opinion, but the penalties last week, you can't have that out of your best player. And I'm sure he knows that. I'm sure Saban's been on him. But I think Bama rolls here. I'll go 55-0. Moving on. Not really a lot of good games. Akron, Tennessee. I think Tennessee rolls. Tennessee big. I think say 65-10. Michigan State at Washington. That could be a pretty good game. Michael Penix there. He's the quarterback there at Washington. Pretty good player. Michigan State's an underdog. I'll go with the Spartans. I think the Spartans go in there, go out west and pull an upset. I'll say 30-27. South Florida at Florida. Anthony Richardson got to work on the passing game. Like I said in the beginning here, Florida, for that guy to only have 4 rushing yards, that's not good. He's too good of a runner to only have 4 rushing yards. Got to implement him more back in the run game there for Florida, and I think that'll open up the passing game for him to make better throws. I don't think Florida can rely on that guy to win games throwing the football with his right arm. I just don't. So this could be a pretty good ball game. I give the edge to Florida. That's a big line. I mean, 24 points. I think South Florida covers that. I think Florida wins 34-24. Let's see here. Some late games. Okay. UTSA at Texas. Quinn Ewers went out for Texas last week. Hudson Card, he was limping around too. Hey, gutsy performance by that guy, though. He's out there playing. He was hurt. Obviously, you could tell it was, but a gutsy performance, man. I mean, you got to tip your hat to the way Texas played. I thought early in the game, Sarkisian's play calling was excellent, like it was when he was at Alabama. The dude has a knack for play calling. Another guy that's caught my attention, I'm going off script here, is Signetti there at Pitt. That dude can call plays, offensive coordinator. And that Pitt team's got a lot of talent. That's a talented football team. And I put up something this week about my top 15 players in college and juniors and seniors that I'm monitoring for the upcoming 2023 NFL draft. So that's on lowdownsports.com. I also put each week I'm going to put my SEC rankings. I'm going to rank each team, how I feel like they're moving up and down depending on their play. So that's also on lowdownsports.com. I'm also contributing to Field Level Media, doing some stuff with the Falcons. I did a little preview too for Auburn and Penn State. So keep an eye on that in the coming future with Field Level Media, and they're fieldlevelmedia.com. You can go in there and get game previews, NFL, college. They do recasts for MLB, NFL, college football, hockey. They do it all. So those are my buddies there, Jeff and Derek over there running that up-and-coming company, fieldlevelmedia.com. We're going to go 8 o'clock game, Miami at Texas A&M. A&M, oh, Lord. Jimbo, all that money. You getting beat at home to Appalachian State. You know what? You might get beat at home this week to Miami. Mario Cristobal brings the Canes in there. A&M, they're a favorite. I don't see A&M losing another game, especially at night. That's a tough place to play at night. Tyler Van Dyke, though, he's a good player at quarterback there from Miami. And so is Henry Parrish there at running back. So Haynes King and that A&M offense, they got to get it going, man. I mean, they got to get it going. If they lose this game before they really get into SEC play, this could be a wing dinger for Jimbo, this season. I mean, I think the seat's going to get real hot. But, what you going to do, light $100 million on fire, A&M? It's a lot of cash to just light on fire and get a new coach. But I think A&M gets it done here. I don't know how because their offense isn't any good. But I'll say A&M 23, Miami 20. A game out west, late game, 9:30 on Fox, Fresno State against USC. I mentioned it to Chris Gordy on my interview on lowdownsports.com before the season that I thought USC could be a sleeper team. I mean, Lincoln Riley, the guy everywhere, he knows offense. Caleb Williams there at quarterback. They got Jordan Addison at wide receiver, the Blitnikoff Award winner. Travis Dye at tailback. I watched them somewhat last week. There was so many good games on last Saturday night. But they turned Stanford over, okay? And when you have a powerful offense and your defense can create turnovers, that meshes well because it's kind of like I equated this to the Indianapolis Colts when Peyton Manning and they had when they had Dwight Freeney and Mathis, defensive ends. If the Colts got up on you by 17 points quick, and then the other team had to come back, and you got those two dudes coming off the edge as pass rushers, you feed into what they do best. And I'm not saying USC has players like that as pass rushers, but their defense is forcing turnovers. And let's just say first possession, Caleb Williams hits Addison for a 75-yard touchdown. Boom, up 7-0. Next possession, USC's defense stops him. Boom, Caleb Williams breaks one for 50 yards. All of a sudden, you're down 14-0, and your game plan, unless you're patient, which that takes discipline. But unless you're patient, your game plan is kind of out the window in the first 8 minutes of the first quarter. So that's what a high-scoring offense does to teams. Kind of like we saw LSU a couple years back. Kind of like we've seen with Alabama. Kind of like we've seen with Clemson. Ohio State. I mean, if you're down 17, 20, or 21-0 in the first quarter, I mean, like, it's well, I can't just run the ball. Well, you can, but if it doesn't work, you're gonna go down more points. So I think this USC team is dangerous, and they have good players. And who's gonna really? I mean, Utah is about the only team that can probably beat them in the Pac-12, and the Pac-12 is not any good. So I think USC is a team to look out for now, man. I mean, and I won't, guys, watch that game, see what you think. But I think they're going to steamroll Fresno State, and I'll go 45-23. And I wanted to mention this too. Like I said, I have as I watch games, I'm taking notes of players that I think are good players, juniors, seniors for the upcoming draft. So I'm putting that list on my website, and going to have some cool guests on in the coming weeks. It's still a little early to say, hey, what do you think about this team or that team? We're still gathering intel. But I hope you're enjoying what I'm doing. I'm going to get better at this video stuff. I got to purchase some equipment. But right now, I'm just trying to put up content, and I hope you're bearing with me, and I hope you're liking it, and going to keep pumping it out. And you guys have a great weekend, and I will talk to y'all soon. So have a good football weekend.